Okay, so today let's talk about vector products, no? So dot or scalar product versus cross or vector product. So far we have learned to add and basically subtract man sa aton nga vectors by using the component method kung mabalas ang resultants nyo ha. So do pareho man ang ginadugang nyo kag ginabuhin man ang mga vectors nga madamo-damo. So like I mentioned in our classes, pag gusto ka mo kung asta pila kabilog ng mga vectors, basta just solve for all the x components, solve for all the y components, get the magnitude, get the angle, and you're done. Now, so you know how to add and subtract vectors, but how do you multiply vectors? Is it possible to divide vectors? Basically, it's not possible to divide vectors, but it's possible to divide a vector by a scalar. So, amo na siya, pwede na siya. Also, it's possible to multiply a vector and a scalar. Pakita ko lang karon. But for now, ang i-focus natin is multiplying vectors. Yeah, multiplying a vector by a vector. So, you will come up with either a dot product. So, from the word, from the parenthesis, gimbutang ko di, ang ato nga dot product should give you a scalar answer. Meanwhile, a cross product should give you a vector nga answer. Okay? So, let's look at the concept. Okay. So, you already know that we can plot our vectors in the xy plane. Okay. You know that the components are x and y components. Okay. Let me introduce you guys to the letters I and J. Okay. So, in vectors, guys, I stands for the x component and J stands for the y component. Okay. So, given naton dire is ang aton nga vector A. So, as you can remember, we represent our vectors as a certain letter, whatever letter you want, and a hat. Okay. So, ang aton nga given, 3.16 units ang aton nga vector A, and ang iyang nga angle is 18.43 degrees. Standard na ni siya, but I will just put north of east kaya mo nang naangdan naton. Now, I was able to get the x and y components. The x component for 3.16, 18.43 degrees is 3. So, 3 ang iyang x component, butangan ko doon I. Ang iya naman yung y component, if you use, of course, ang naangdan nato, no? So, 3.16 cosine theta or 3.16 sine theta. Just remember, I got the y component and it's 1. So, instead of writing 1 direo, huksan nyo lang si 1, j diretso. So, kabalo na kamo no nga ang aton sini nga. Meron yan di number 1. Per secret lang. Okay. As for vector B, ang aton nga given is 3.61 units, 56.31 degrees north of east. Now, using the equations or the formulas given to you last time, you may solve for the x component, which is 2. Butangan ko di I. And the y component is 3. Butangan ko di j. Okay. So, this system can go up to 3D vectors. 3D vectors is very useful sa cross product naton karon. So, if you're now talking about 3D vectors, may madugang na nga letter I, J, K. So, may K pag ginadingadugang. But for now, let's just deal with 2D vectors, no? Okay, so now you know that you are able to look for x and y components and represent them as such. Another way to represent your components in vectors is this. So let's say vector B, butangan naton saan daw, bracket din matawag. Basta mo ni siya wala nga symbol, do greater than, do less than. Then 2, 3, and then a greater than. So with this, it's immediately understood these are components and this is a vector because of the hat. So yeah, either way, these are ways to represent your components, no? So horizontal ni, klala nyo na sila ha. Kaya nga, karon, dot product ang aton nga sudlan. Okay. So for dot product, gina-expect naton scalar aton answer. So wala dapat sang ij, wala dapat sang component, dapat isa lang na siya ka number. Wala sang angle. Okay. The process is that A dot B is equal to AX, which just means the x component of A times bx, or the x component of B, plus the y component of A, y component of B. So, kagina may I, kag may j, kagina may do bracket nyo, subong naman nira naman ax. So, these are several ways to represent your components. Hindi ka matalang, please, paagi lang na siya nga mag-represent sa components ta. If you want, actually, mo man yun, pwede man eh. A dot B can be AI, B I, plus AJ, BJ. That's another way. But, the thing, guys, is, kung amo ni siya, o do, ginapabalo mo lang nga 3I, do hindi siya appropriate in a way nga do, basta, hindi siya appropriate in this situation. Yeah, so just follow this. Okay? So, let's use the image kanina. Ariho. For example, ta. So, we want to look for the dot product of these two vectors. So, A dot B should be equal to, okay, ang x component ni A nga 3 times ang x component ni B nga 2 plus ang y component ni A nga 1 times ang y component ni B nga 3. So, A dot B is equal to 6 plus 3. And finally, A dot B is equal to 9. Wala na sang angle, nadula na siya. Bailin ni Day, karon ko na storyahan. So, it's 9 units. Okay, now storyahan ta ng angle. Yeah, you know the angle for A, for angle, for vector A. You also know the angle for vector B. Now, what if I ask you, what is the angle between these two vectors? Pos namin si kung anong angle ni B minus angle ni A, siya na ang angle between them. Okay, that's good, that's good. But later on, if we are dealing with 3D vectors, hindi na siya muna ka-simple. Okay? But let's prove, guys, that using dot products, you are able to look for the angle between two vectors. So, the formula for that is A dot B is equal to magnitude of A. So, if you see this absolute sign, absolute value nga sign, that means magnitude ni A times magnitude ni B cosine theta. And this theta is the angle between those two vectors. Okay? So, that means, guys, you have to take note of the answer na tundri nga 9 units. Kay siya ni ho. So, siya ni C, 9. Okay? Kay i-reason ko ni. Okay? And let's fill in all the values. So, A dot B, nasuma na itong bago lang, 9 equals. Ano ko no ang magnitude ni A? So, as you can remember, magnitude of A is square root of the components. 3 squared plus 1 squared. So, calculate nyo. Actually, given ko na ginamo. Sa dire. So, it's 3.16. Nan. So, oops, lawas. There you go. So, that's 3.16. 3.16 times. Ang kay B naman niya, 2 squared plus 3 squared equals, so, square root of 4 plus 9. 4 plus 9. Square root of 13, or 3.61. Oops. 3.61. So, it was also given earlier. So, that nyo din. So, buong meron ka mo di cosine theta. Ti ang ginapangita gani, ang angle between the two vectors. So, transpose everything that you can. So, 9 diri divided by 3.16 times 3.61. So, ang nabilin diri nga side, it's cosine theta. So, buong si cosine, pwede nyo pa ni ma-transpose. This becomes arc cosine or shift cosine sa calculator nyo. 9 over 3.16 times 3.61. Okay. So, calculators, arc cosine 9 divided by 3.16 times 3.61 is equal to 37.91 degrees. This is the angle between vectors A and B. To prove, kay since 2D lang ni siya, di ba silin, tapos na miss ang angle ni B minus kay angle ni A. It doesn't work that way all the time, no? Pero sa ini nga situation, it works. 37.91, no? 37.91. So, ang angle ko ni B, 56.31 minus 18.43. Taon-taon check to. So, 56.31 minus 18.43 is indeed, it's kind of weird lang galing. It's 37.88. Sa ato na suma, it's 37.91. So, since from taking the values of the components, nag-round off na ko nga daan, so, ang aton diri nga answer, medyo super rounded off na sa. But at least, lapit-lapit lang. Okay? Yeah. Amo na siya ang aton nga dot product. I will send out notes pagid nga nagsuma ko sa dot product later on. No? So yeah, the use of that product is it's usually to find the angle between two vectors. Especially kung 3D sa. Important na siya. Okay? Cross product. Okay. Now, cross product will not work on 2D vectors. So, cross product is useful for 3D vectors. So, with 3D vectors, amo itong bahogin na. Ngara ka na subong I, J, kag K. I, J, kag K. What does the plane for 3D vectors look like? So, it looks like this. Ang X natin kapahigda Japon, Y kapatindog Japon, and then Z kapauna. Okay. So, amo ni ang aton nga gamitan nga standards. Or otherwise, kung meron ako sang ipakita nga image, I think I include kung maginada siya per me, kung na siyang axis, no? So, yeah, just take note of that. X will give you the I component, yan, etc., etc. Now, how do you draw? The first thing is, for example, sa A na to, no? Change color. Okay. So, it says here, mayara kasang 2 sa imo nga X. So, nagmark ko day 1 and then 2. Okay. And then, sa aton nga Y naman niya is 3. So, pasaka siya. Now, you can make a shape na daw ka rectangle, no? So, na-cover mo na, kumbaga, ang imong X kag Y. And, for your K or for your Z naman component, 1 lang. Sorry, di ang aton nga. So, gapayda naman siya. Diri, as you can see, pwede ka mo makahimo sang daw box. So, sa mga tanda dira mag-drawing, nakahimo na ka mo box. Okay. Kay 3D siya gani. It has a length, width, and height. From the origin, hasta diri sa may edge sang inyo, opposite edge sang inyo nga box, da ni butang inyo nga arrowhead. And now you have a 3D vector. Okay. Natuto ko ando ko di hasta mapanas ni. Nope, I cannot undo any further. Let's try naman niya paano drawingon si vector B. So, with vector B, you have 1 sa X ninyo. And then for Y, you have 2. So, you have a rectangle here, the back. Ang inyo naman niya nga Z is 2. So, you have another one here. So, usually, ang inyo nga madrawing, dire nga rectangle is 1 dito sa likod, kag 1 dito sa dalom. And then, just imagine that you're drawing a box. From the origin, pakadto sa edge ng inyo nga box, da ka mo madraw sa inyo nga arrowhead. So, practice, ang tagi nagmay. And then, now you have the image for vector B. Okay. Using the cross product will take a little bit of math. This is a matrix that you have here. So, i-plus star ninyo, guys, ang inyo nga mga values. So, your X, Y, and Z components, kapasunod sila like this. And, yeah, the same for your B naman dili nga vectors lalom. And, copy this first column dire. So, that's just a guide. Okay? Now, to know what the component for X is, ang inyo nga sugdan is this little matrix right here. Ini siya, So, this is AY, AZ, BY, BZ, I. So, i-copy nyo lang da. And then, ang sign nyo dapat minus. So, you should observe, guys, is plus, minus, plus. Amo na ang ato na signs, no? Okay. So, once you're done with this little matrix para kay I, minus, J naman, diri naman kung mag-iyoho. Diri naman. Okay. Paunahon nyo si X. Kaya tiuna, manggad sa alphabet. So, AX, AZ, BX, BZ. Miss, may matabo kung masulit na siya. Yes. Ang matrix natin, very strict na siya. So, you have to follow the algorithm, the protocol, whatever. So, dapat unahon nyo na si AX ninyo dire. And the same thing with, so, what happens is, ang wala nyo na cover is this, guys. So, now you have AX, AY, BX, BY. For K. Try natin solve initially. Oh. Okay. So, what is the cross product of vector A, kag vector B? Or, this. This is how it should look like. Okay. So, i-align nyo tanan ng mga components. So, you have 2, 3, 1. You have 1, 2, 2. Okay. And then, like I said, ang first na column, copy nyo din. Okay. Now, for the I or the X component, ang aton nga lang tawon is 3, 1, 2, 2, I. So, positive na di ang sign. No? So, yung inapag-isulat, pero minus. Okay. 1, erase. So, unahon, ang diri nga column. So, that's 2. Oops. Wait. There. 2, 1, 1, 2 for J plus ang iniman ng mga columns. So, that's 2, 3, 1, 2, K. How do you solve this for matrix? It's down minus up. Okay. So, 3 times 2 is 6 minus ang kapasaka naman. So, 2 times 1 is 2. I minus down 4 minus 1. J. Plus, ang down nga, 4 minus ang up nga, 3. K. So, 6 minus 2 is 4I, minus 4 minus 1 is 3J, plus 4 minus 3 is 1. Hindi na pagsulat, K na lang. So, as you can see, guys, your answer is a vector, which means, tsakto to, ang ginabatagin na cross products are also called vector products kasi your output is a vector. What is the, kumbaga kagina, si dot product, mabalaan nyo kung ano ang angle sa tunga nila duwa. Okay. Ano naman yung iyaya ni cross product ng situation? Okay. So, just imagine, guys, nga ang aton duwa ni ka-vectors, ihimuon ta siya nga doon sa ka-plane. Okay. So, 4 minus 3j plus k, although medyo struggle na ni pag-drawing naton, what happens is, butangan to sa isa pagidi ka angle, which should be 4 minus 3j plus k, and it should form a right angle between these two vectors. So, dapat may right angle na siya between two vectors. Okay? That just means orthogonal. So, kung ano nga vector ang masolve nyo gamit ang cross product, orthogonal siya sa inyo nga vector A and vector B. Kaya it should form a right angle between each of them. So, muna siya. Kung paminsaron nyo, guys, orthogonal, mismo, ano naman. So, as you can see, ang atong diri nga axis, so you have, let's say lang, imagine nyo na lang, no? Si x-axis is a vector kuno abe, and then si z-axis is a vector man kuno abe, and what axis will have a right angle between each of these axes? So, you have y. May right angle siya between y and x, ag may right angle man siya between y and z. So, doon mo man na siya. May duwa ka di kuno abi ka vector. Ano nga vector ang makapa-right angle sa tunga nila? So, that is the cross product. Okay. Just remember, guys. So, ma-review kita naman. Okay. So, for dot product, dapat ang inyo gidyang answer scalar. Okay, scalar na siyang inyong answer. Si dot product, makasolve ka mo bisan 2D nga vector. Okay? 2D nga vectors. Both of these equations are very useful as of now. Okay. And then, it's simply multiply ang duha ka x component plus multiply ang duha ka y component. Kung mayari, pag hindi z component, multiply nyo ang duha ka z component. Goods na sa. Okay? As for your vector product or cross product, madrogid ka mo dapat sa matrix niyo. Later on in our class, I will show you how to use the calculator magamit sa matrix. I think with ES Plus, you can go up to 3x3 matrices. But, yeah, in our class, hasta lang man na siya duha ka vectors. So, it's a 2x3 matrix. 2x3, 3x2. Basta ako na siya. Now, once you draw your matrix, ang first na column, copy niya diho. And then, hilabtan yun yung, kumbaga, ang diri ang punta. So, that's AYAZ, BYBZ. And then, down minus up. Always down minus up. Ang sign sa atin is plus minus plus. Paunahon gid ang X. Kaysa kay Z. Kaya siya ang nauna sa alphabet. Okay? And, yeah. That's it.